Hi, everybody. Welcome to Story Hour. I'm your host, Daniel Marcus. My fabulous co-host and partner in literary crime is Laura Blackwell. And I started Story Hour just about 5 years ago. It was like early days, pandemic, crazy, crazy shit was going on. I wanted to just create a space for my writer friends and I to get together and share our work. And shortly after I kicked it off, I asked my friend Laura to join me as co-host. And since then, pretty much every week for 5 years, with between Christmas and New Year's, maybe not, or very occasionally we would skip a week, but pretty much a rock solid cadence for 5 years, and it's been an amazing 5 years. We have had just unbelievable authors from really every corner of the speculative fiction tent, horror, weird, science fiction, slipstream, on and on, you name it. And new writers, not so new writers, just all over the map. And it's just been great. The way it works is really simple, and I think of it as kind of one of the oldest forms of entertainment in human history, which is folks just sitting around the fire telling lies to each other. And so every week, that's what we do. We have two authors, about 30 minutes each, sharing their short fiction with you. And this week, we are really delighted and honored to have Daria Lavelle and Tobi Ogundiran. We're going to start the program with Daria. Before I do, I just want to shout out, thank you, SIFWA, for a grant which helps us keep the lights on. Thank you, SIFWA. Daria Lavelle is an American fiction writer. She was born in Kyiv, Ukraine, and raised in the New York metro area. Her work explores themes of identity and belonging through magic and the uncanny. Her short stories have appeared in The Deadlands, Dread Machine, and elsewhere. And her debut novel, Aftertaste, about a chef whose food can bring spirits back to the living realm for one last meal with their loved ones. That just sounds so awesome, Daria. And that will be out in May from Simon and Schuster. And I can't wait personally. That really sounds like a lot of fun. She holds degrees in writing from Princeton and Sarah Lawrence College and enjoys opera, one night ultimate werewolf, and any and every variety of pasta. And you can learn more about her at Daria Lavelle, Lavelle.com. Daria, welcome back, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. So I tried to crowdsource what I was going to read tonight, and the thing that wound up winning on Instagram was far too long to read when I tested it. So I'm going to read something else instead. I'm going to read two short stories, like short. Um, the first one is called Dark Kingdoms. The small content warning that I'll give is that it does include mention of kidnapping, religious cults, and assault, but it is a dark fairy tale. So here we go. Dark Kingdoms. The Goblin King doesn't have a name, or at least nothing you can use to summon him in a way that makes him come. He comes when he pleases, takes what he pleases, doesn't say please. He says he'll take Henry if I don't accept his invitation to the kingdom. He says it'll be good for good this time, that I'd better make up my mind. I know he's serious because he's taken my brother twice before. Both times, Henry just vanished, and the men couldn't find him. Even the dog couldn't catch his trace. The goblins in town all knew where he was, but of course they weren't saying. We'd see them at the grocer's, and they'd tip their hats and shake their heads, tell my mother how sorry they were, how they were sure he'd turn up. Then they'd leer at me with their sharp-toothed grins, their guilty goblin hands hidden deep in their trousers. A magnificent masquerade. My mother would smile, oblivious, and thank them for their prayers. The first time it happened, I tried to warn her, but she didn't want to believe what I said about the figures dancing beneath the moon, turning the leaves of trees to silver and gold, reciting spells to seduce and seclude. She had me exorcised by a man in black, who could very well have been a goblin in his spare time. My stepfather told me to stop telling lies, that I was too old for fairy stories. Only my grandmother, who grew up near woods like these and knew what they hid, took me seriously. She was skinning an apple with her old knife, the peel coming off in a long, tortuous strip, when I told her I didn't think Henry was coming back. Well, of course not, child, she said, slicing off a piece of sweet flesh and handing it to me. They never just come back. Don't you remember Giselle, her sister? I thought you girls had more sense after that, that you understood. Man or monster, nothing's free, but blood is blood and worth protecting. You remember that. Then she told me what I'd have to do to get him back, and warned me to be bold. When Henry had been gone long enough that the man in charge of looking told Mother gently to start thinking about arrangements, I went to go trade for him. I crept into the woods near our house, snuck out after dark in nothing but a nightshirt, and knelt by the gnarled old tree the Goblin King uses as a sometimes pulpit. I offered the air and the darkness anything he wanted in exchange for my brother. The Goblin King appeared then, a shade dimmer than night. Only the flash of his tinsel grin let me know he was there. The first time we bartered, he stole a lock of my hair. The second time, a year later, when Henry disappeared again, he stole a kiss. Both times I spent the night in fever dreams, thinking about the Goblin King's peace blossom mouth, his hemlock hair, his tawny eyes, his white hot hands. Both times Henry woke the next morning in his bed, talking about how he'd run away, how he'd come back now, how he was sorry. Never mind that he couldn't say where he'd gone or if he'd met anyone there. Never mind that he wasn't starved or hurt or even dirty. Never mind that he was a little kid and could barely make himself cereal. Never mind, the Goblin King tells me when I ask what he'll do once I'm in his kingdom. This gives me pause, though I comfort myself that it'll be better than what would happen to Henry. After all, Henry is the worm and I am the carp. When I ask him what his castle's like, the Goblin King tosses his mane and gives a pointed smile. You'd like it, he says instead of an answer. Be bold, he goads. I try to remember what Giselle said about how it was when her older sister went off with him. This was years ago, the tale of a string of summers when girls just went missing. Sometimes they'd wake in the woods with their hair braided, golden leaves woven into the plaits. After Giselle woke up like that, bewildered, her black hair coiled snake-like about her head and circulated by golden thorns, Odile went into the woods and never came out. She left a note in her own blood, so the Goblin King couldn't vanish it. Giselle showed me. It's rust-colored now, like an old nail. But not too bold, it says. Just those 4 words. The Goblin King braids my hair with his spindle fingers, working the strands, his movements hypnotic. Tomorrow, he crows into my ear. He twists the braid back up my crown and tucks the tail beneath, a labyrinth of hair. He arranges jeweled pins, silver branches, pearlescent moths, hematite flies, their eyes a diamond, around my head. Then the Goblin King takes my hand and slides my ring finger into his mouth down to the hilt. I cannot feel the back of his throat. He sinks his pointed teeth into my flesh, hard enough to break the skin. A gift, he says. When he pulls his lips away, there's a ring, droplet rubies set in silver, lingering where a wedding band should go. When I wake in the morning, the ring is gone, the jeweled pins dissolved like dew. My sheets riddle with twigs, the braids in my hair are loose and matted, and my stepfather stands over me with his hat and coat already on, his hands shoved deep in his pockets, fiddling with change. I can hear the metallic clink. Dress for chapel, he tells me. Wear your best. It's an honor, after all, to be chosen. At the service, we sit in the pew awaiting the sermon. Stepfather and mother, Henry and grandmother and me, the 5 of us and everyone we know seated in a ring, concentric generations. Across the circle, Giselle shoots me a small smile. Her hair is braided too, and this time there is no one to take her place. When the Grand Master ascends the pulpit, raises his hands, flashes his devastating smile, his silver-capped tooth catching light like a flare, the eyes of all the goblins in the crowd slide away to fixate on him. Tonight, he tells, we will dance and feast and make our lands fertile. We will make offerings to the spirit in our wood that he may reward our sacrifice. And we will sow our seed that we may reap up what we sow. Together, let us pray to be made worthy. Let us raise our voices to our king. The village cheers, the goblins loudest of all, and the crowd begins to sing, a wailing hymn like dying light. In the pandemonium, my grandmother presses close. In the pocket of my dress, I feel a weight catch hold, and my fingertips grip the familiar heft of her apple knife. I run my thumb over the engraving, worn shallow and soft by her constant fingering, traced again and again like a rosary cross, and I know that she is saying different prayers. That night at the festival, Giselle and I spin and spin and spin. We get dizzy, we get drunk. Of all the girls who've bled this season, it's only she and I who have been braided, who have been chosen. When the harvest moon grows high and hungry, we leave the circle hand in hand and go to meet the Goblin King. We find the clearing, kneel in our good clothes, wait and wait because there is no name we can call to summon him. When the Goblin King appears, a spark of quicksilver, Giselle squeezes my hand. I know what she is thinking. How is it that we can love and fear, want and wither in the same heartbeat? The Goblin King is dressed all in white. He glows in the moonlight, bright and hot as a sun. He is horrible and irresistible, seduction and seclusion. We are so alone in this dark, dark place. Welcome, welcome, my boldest girls. He opens his arms, smile flashing like a knife. Neither of us move. Come now, he pouts. Is that any way to greet your king? Giselle, Sylphide, we can do better than that, surely. Your Majesty, Giselle gasps, bowing her raven head, her braids beginning to unwind. And you, Sylphide, he asks me, are you here to join my kingdom or to sell your brother in your stead? I nod my head, my eyes never leaving his face. He is cruel and beautiful, a silver snake with double tongues. I do not bow, but the Goblin King seems satisfied with partial deference. Then come, my fairy queens, he claps his hands, and let's begin. Giselle and I sit back to back, and the Goblin King braids our long hair together. Hers black, mine red, the strands running like rivers. He covers us with moss, with conifers, with toothy burrs, and with the wave of his hand they turn to copper, to silver, to gold. When we're made sufficiently beautiful, he kneels before us, one after the other, and asks how we will serve him. Giselle goes first, and I can feel her heart thump against my spine as she whispers, as your obedient wife, in the name of the feather and sun and hollow spirit. When he kisses her, his cyanide mouth draws her into a dreamless sleep. The Goblin King glides to me next, swift and smooth as a moonbeam. I've waited so long, Sylphide, he says, and twists a rope of my hair around his wrist. I knew from the first time you crossed into this place that you were bold. Tell me now, he whispers, how you will serve your king. Come closer, I whisper back, and I'll show you. The Goblin King leans in with his hungry mouth, his gleaming jaw, his sharp, sharp teeth, and I slash his beautiful throat with my grandmother's knife. In his moment of surprise, he is no longer grand, neither monster nor master. He is only a man, and for all his magic, he bleeds just like one bleeds and bleeds until all his heart's blood runs cold, pools on the earth at my feet, just like the engraving on grandmother's knife foretold. In the place where I slew him, nightshade now grows, its buds closed and invisible by day, but wide open, alluring, irresistible by night. The Grandmaster is gone, and the goblins vanished the same eve I vanquished their Shadow King. My stepfather left behind only a pile of still warm clothes, which we burned rather than bury. Village girls no longer disappear into the woods or wake with braided hair, their skin rolled with dirt. When they come to the kingdom now, it is by invitation, not incantation. I teach them to hunt goblins here, the ones who want to learn. I tell them how the world is, that to be a girl is to sow doubt. I gift them each a silver knife, inscribed with a warning, when they learn to repeat to anyone who grazes lines they have drawn for themselves. Be bold, but not too bold, lest all your heart's blood should run cold. Before I send them out into the world, I tell them to look carefully at who they let in, to find the cracks, to check them for monsters. The Goblin King was monstrous after all, but at first, he looked just like an ordinary man. So that was the first one. And then, and then the second one is even shorter. It's a little Greek retelling. Don't think it has real content warnings. It's called Perce and Scylla. Persephone had a cool glass of water on her nightstand and was dipping the comb in, working it gently through Scylla's long, wet curls, taking her time with the knots. Scylla watched the reflections in the mirror, her eyes tracking Persephone's butterfly movements, the way she concentrated, the tip of her soft crocus tongue at the edge of her mouth. Her slender fingers, pink petal hands, curled in the air as if through water. Should I just chop it all off? Scylla sighed finally. How'd I look bald? You've got such good hair, Persephone tissed. I just wish you'd let me set it more often. What for? So I can catch me a man? I've seen what's out there. I'm not taking that bait, not for all the feta in Thebes. Oh, I don't know. She dropped her eyes. Hades isn't bad. Not bad. Perce, he's the pits. Death warmed up. Well, there is something warm about him, and deep and dark. She gave a small shiver in the mirror, a private smile. Deep? Have you been going by the river again? You know Styx is ouch. Sorry. Look, I don't like ow telling you what to, so don't. Persephone gave a hard yank, meant it to hurt. But that's why I'm here, to keep you out of trouble. This drew Persephone up short, her comb stopping midway down Scylla's back. I thought we were friends. We are, you know we are, but your mother asked, oh, my mother, my mother, my mother. What she doesn't know could fill the wine-red sea. She wants me to stay a daisy fresh girl forever. There's nothing wrong with daisies, except they die in frost, Persephone said savagely, her eyes meeting Scylla's in the glass. The first time Persephone got on his motorcycle, Scylla watched them ride off, heart snarled in her vocal cords. She'd warned Persephone against it, had told her to stay at the dance, that there were other fish in the sea. But when Hades strolled into the gymnasium, white tee, careless hair, those molten eyes, that killer smile, Scylla knew there'd be no stopping her. The way Persephone looked at him, a flower leaning toward the sun, made the whole thing inevitable. He called her buttercup, spun her round, kissed her in plain view of everybody. When he escorted her out on his arm, Scylla hissed at her to reconsider. I'm going, Persephone hissed back. Now you can either be a real friend and hold my sweater, or you can slink off like a traitor and tell mother. Scylla reached out her hand and took the cardigan. She watched Hades lift Persephone onto the seat, watched him slide on in front, watched them press their pelvises together, her hands vanishing beneath his leather jacket, beneath the cotton of his shirt. Scylla felt the fabric of the cardigan grow hot in her hands, felt herself tear, felt envious, felt roused, wished it were her up there on the back of that motorcycle, or Persephone, instead of the sweater, growing hot in the palms of her hands. When he started up the bike, it split the sky like a clap of thunder. They used to laugh about Persephone's mother. They used to call her Demeter Maid and take bets on whether or not she'd be waiting up when Persephone slunk home past curfew, wineglass on the counter, slippers sour, arms akimbo. But Persephone's absence had turned her cold, hard, unyielding as frozen soil. She cornered Scylla at Olympus Diner 9 days after Persephone disappeared. She backed her into the jukebox, her stare fixing Scylla like an insect pin, her cigarette fuming like a kill jar. Where is she? Demeter demanded, blowing hot smoke. I know, you useless girl. I don't, Scylla gasped, which was true. They could be anywhere. Well, you had better find out. You and your little sorority. Okeanid's my rear end. She blew more smoke out the corner of her mouth. Swim to the depths of the sea, the deep underground, the center of the earth if you have to, and be quick about it. If she tastes so much as a seed from his garden, I swear by this life and the next you'll live to regret it. Demeter, please, maybe if you just... But a fury of Greeks came carousing then, a dangle of drunkards wailing in the street outside, drowning out her counsel. At their approach, Demeter clutched her chest like a string of pearls. Oh, my heart, my frightened Thumos, I can hear her cries, my poor sweet girl, my delicate flower. Scylla strained her ears, heard only the inebriates. What are you still doing here? Demeter snapped. Get going. And she flicked her wrist to make Scylla fly, to herald her faster, the wings tearing through the girl's back like fistfuls of hair, unfurling large and feathered, chrysanthemum white, gyrating madly, pumping her out of the diner, out of Demeter's sight, out into the dark night. You look happy, the first thing Scylla said to Persephone when she found her. If you are here, I guess that means I won't be for long. But Persephone answered. The room was lovely, walls of black onyx, a river view, not a flower in sight. The vases were filled with red coral, petrified wood, translucent slivers of amber, beauty that would never die. Persephone was lovely too, suited to the ash and dust, a bloom that flowered in a breathless place. Scylla watched the ferry pull away along the foam, heard the ferryman call. Persephone watched Scylla, frowning at her wings, at how painfully bright their fluffy down appeared beside Hades' rich dark. You should go with him, Scylla said quietly, nodding at the ferryman. Better to come back than have her fetch you. You have no idea, Persephone scoffed, what going back will reap. And staying? You know she stopped the crops, the sun, the seasons. The dark and cold is killing everything. Well, now you know how I feel. She says she'll curse the lands with eternal winter, starve every man, woman, and child until he lets you go. I'm not his prisoner, Scylla, and I won't go back. I can't live like that, pressed and pinned, archived behind glass. Do you love him? Persephone looked at her then, irises moon bright, hopelessly. And Scylla, knowing the feeling, bent her mouth to Persephone's ear, repeated what her mother said about eating so much as a seed. Persephone ate 6 to be safe. Neither girl expected that it wouldn't be enough, or the cleaved existence that followed, how Persephone would ache in the gentle warmth of spring, the hot embrace of summer, how she'd long for the cool, dead dark while everything but her bloomed above. Scylla would ache too, counting the days till Perce came back to her, throwing herself into the wintry waters, hoping to drown and see her quicker, until Demeter learned that it was she who'd left the garden open, who'd let her wildflower free and plucked the wings like petals from Scylla's back, Daisy chained her legs into a tail, made her monstrous, made her deadly, made her marry the sea. Whenever a ship sailed past, Scylla begged the sailors for death, but inevitably, instead, she'd swallow 6 of their number, think of their warm bodies floating in her gut, one for each month Persephone was away, one for each pomegranate pip she'd swallowed, one for each mistake Scylla had made, liking her, loving her, losing her, misleading her, leaving her, letting her go. Each night when she dove beneath the waves, she ran her fingers through her hair, pulled hard, harder, imagined it was Perce with the comb, imagined she had never stopped brushing. That's the end.
Oh my. Um, I just loved both of those stories. What lovely work. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Um, wow. Uh, Daria Lavelle, folks. It's our custom here at Story Hour to just pause for a moment between authors. Think of it as kind of a soft reboot, just a moment of silence to kind of savor the work that you just experienced and kind of cleanse your palate for the work ahead. So we're just going to take, just a few short seconds to just take a couple of breaths and just be still and get ready for the next. So, Daria Lavelle, folks. Holy crap. Lovely work. Um, our next author is Tobi Ogundiran. Toby has also been with us at Story Hour before. He's the award-winning author of The Guardian of the Gods duology, which is In the Shadow of the Fall and At the Fount of Creation, and the critically acclaimed short fiction collection Jackal Jackal, which was a Publishers Weekly Top 10 Summer Read. He is a recipient of the Ignite and British Fantasy Awards. He's been a finalist for the Locus, World Fantasy, British Science Fiction Association, Shirley Jackson, and Nomo Awards, among others. Toby's short fiction has been featured in original anthologies such as Africa Risen, The Book of Witches, Lore and Disorder, in several educational and year's best anthologies, as well as featured twice on the hit podcast LeVar Burton Reads. Born and raised in Nigeria, Toby now lives and works in the US. Toby, welcome back. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dan. Thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure to be on Story Hour and to just enjoy, an hour of lies, as you call it. I'm going to be reading a story from my collection, Jacko Jacko, titled Isn't Your Daughter Such a Doll? Je m'appelle Aurélie, said the girl beside Celine for the umpteenth time. Je suis Nigérienne, je suis une fille comme toi. Celine ignored her, put a finger to her tongue to wet it, and turned over the page she was reading. Of course, she wasn't really reading, but not for lack of trying. Her eyes glazed over the page, the words a blur of black. She wondered why her mother thought she could ever be friends with this girl who kept introducing herself over and over, undaunted by Celine's coldness towards her, determined to make her acquaintance. She looked across the park to where her mother sat, chatting animatedly with her friend in rapid Yoruba, and wondered when she would be done. Celine was bored already and wanted to go home. Je m'appelle Raleigh, the girl called Raleigh began, but Celine was having none of it. Just shut up, she snapped, and stood up to leave. Wait, Raleigh cried, gripping Celine's arm. Don't leave. Celine turned to look at her, eyes flashing with annoyance. So you speak English? Yes, said Raleigh. But you keep speaking French to me, said Celine, a little bewildered. And the same words. Raleigh shrugged sheepishly. We're in Paris, she mumbled. If I knew you didn't understand French, I understand French, Celine cut in. But you don't reply to me. Celine cocked her brows. That's because I wasn't interested in talking to you. Oh. They stood there in silence for a few moments, and Celine realized with a start that this was the first time she had really looked at Rolier. She had long, beautiful lashes, her hair collected in twin braids. Rolier's eye lit up. Do you want to be friends? I can do things, interesting things. We have so much fun. Celine screwed up her nose. No, I don't need friends. Yes, you do, said Rolier, taking Celine's hands in hers, and there was something about the way their hands fit that was perfect, as though they were made for each other. Celine liked it. She didn't want to withdraw her hands as she was wont to do when in contact with strangers. Yes, she needed friends. Yes, she was lonely. That was why her mother introduced her to Relia, a good, fine black girl who was Nigerian and would understand her. And there was something about Relia. All right, she said finally. Let's be friends. They became fast friends, Relia and Celine. They became sisters. You could almost always find them hand in hand skipping down the streets of Paris and singing their favorite song. They wore each other's clothes, braided each other's hair, and slept on the same bed, hugging each other tightly. Celine's parents were immensely pleased. Her father, who was French and owned his own bakery, delighted her and Rolier with sweets and other confectionaries whenever he returned from work, much to the chagrin of her mother, who was Nigerian and curated a book salon, who argued that he was spoiling them too much. No, ma chérie, he would reply, let them be as happy as they can be. One chilly autumn evening, Celine lay in her bed reading her favorite book, while Aurelia skipped on the bed until she was exhausted and finally plopped down next to Celine. What are you reading? She asked, peering over Celine's shoulder. The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Oh, said Aurelia, falling back to the bed. I've read that book 1,000 times. Celine grunted in reply, engrossed in the book. She enjoyed the bright illustrations in this edition and was particularly fascinated with the hideous hump on Quasimodo's back. Relier, seeing that she was being ignored, reached over and snatched the book, jumping off the bed before Celine could snatch it back. Give it back, Celine cried, springing off the bed. No, said Relier, it's a stupid book. It's not a stupid book, Celine cried in defiance. Yes, it is, said Relier, sticking out her tongue. You've read it several times already. So have you, Celine countered. Relia gave a sugary smile. You don't see me reading it now, do you? I don't care, Celine cried, and she lunged for Relia. But Relia was faster. She opened the window and threw out the book. They both watched it draw a parabola in the overcast sky, the wind ripping its pages like a savage dog before it dropped down in bits and pieces to the Parisian streets below. Celine screamed, a familiar rage rising up in her. She charged at Relia, who was laughing. She scratched at her, yanked at her hair, kicked her, and screamed so loudly that both parents broke into the room, their faces masks of worry. Celine! Celine! But there was no reasoning with her. Her father lifted her easily with one arm, and it was not until her mother threatened to smack her to the sky and back that she grew calm and stopped thrashing. Relia lay on the floor, a battered, trembling heap. She hadn't protected herself at all. She hadn't even fought back. Celine hung limply in her father's hands, coming slowly to her senses, wondering if the book was worth so much that it caused her to violently attack her friend. Celine watched her mother rush over to Ralia's aid. She gently guided her into a sitting position and brushed the tangles of hair away from her face. Relia's face was barely recognizable. It was swollen and streaked with blood where Celine had scratched her. Jesu Christi, said her mother. Mon Dieu, echoed her father. I'm sorry, said Celine in a small voice. She wriggled free of her father's grip and went over to Ralier. She stretched out a hand to help, to comfort. She didn't know, but Relia flinched away, shrinking into the wall and the curtains, and it was a knife through Celine's heart. I want to go home, sobbed Relia. I want to go home. Celine did not see Relia for nearly 2 weeks, and she very nearly went mad. She hung out in the favorite park in the hopes that Relia would come skipping so she could apologize profusely to her. But Relia never showed up. It struck Celine as odd that in the several months they had known each other, she had never been to Relia's house. She didn't even know who her parents were or to what school she went. She begged her mother, who had introduced her to Relia, for her address. Surely she would know, but her mother merely pursed her lips and shook her head and said, when Relia is ready to see you, she'll show herself. Her father still brought sweets and cookies every day from work, but now that Relia was not here to share them with her, Celine had absolutely no appetite for them. Once, as she walked down the street with her mother, she caught sight of Relia dancing and skipping merrily to the tunes of a street saxophonist. Celine let go of her mother's hand and raced to her friend, sweeping her up in a crushing hug. Oh, Relia, Relia, I'm so happy to see you. I'm sorry, Kietu, asked the girl, flustered. Kia, Relia? Oh, sorry, it wasn't Relia. The tears came unbidden to her eyes, and Celine stood there in the middle of the street. Her mother's firm but gentle hand pulled her away from the bewildered girl and saxophonist. She led Celine to the railing overlooking the river sign below. I do believe you've learned your lesson, Celine, said her mother softly, wiping the tears that coursed down Celine's cheeks. It doesn't matter what has been done to you. Never, ever lash out like that. We're not animals, thank God, so we shouldn't behave like one. I know, Mama, said Celine, but where is Ralia? I want to apologize. I will speak to her father, said her mother. I'm sure Ralia would love to see you too. That night, as Celine rocked herself to sleep, she heard her door open and caught a whiff of Ralia's familiar scent. She sprang out of the bed and swept Ralia up in a hug. She held her at arm's length to study her face. The scratch marks were still there, and though they were healing, they would leave black marks across her face once they had healed completely. A wave of guilt washed over Celine. I'm sorry, Relia. I'm so sorry. It's fine, said Relia. I'm sorry too. I shouldn't have thrown out your book. I was stupid. No, I was stupid. I shouldn't have. No, I was stupid. And then they burst out laughing. A warm feeling of contentment spread over Celine. Look, I bought you a new one. Belia produced a gift bag from the folds of her skirt and withdrew from it a sparkling new copy of The Hunchback of Notre Dame. They fell asleep in each other's arms. By the next morning, under the bright rays of the sun, Celine could see that Rolia was limping. It was a slight limp, barely noticeable, but it was there all right. Celine initially decided to ignore it, but as the day progressed, Rolia's limp became even more pronounced, so that she was forced, eventually, to voice concern. Did I do this to you? She asked tentatively. Do what? Asked Rolia, a little distracted. She was trying to catch a pigeon. Your leg, you're limping. Oh, this, said Rolia, laughing. She lunged and closed her hands around the unsuspecting pigeon, which promptly gave a loud squawk, struggling to free itself. It soon gave up, realizing the futility of its efforts. I twisted my ankle when I jumped off the bell tower. I always land in an easy crouch, but this last time I was distracted, so I twisted my ankle. It'll be fine. Celine wasn't quite sure she had heard correctly. You jumped from the bell tower? Relia gave her a sly look, a light smile playing on her lips. She reached into her pocket and brought out some breadcrumbs which she began to feed to the grateful pigeon. Yes, I've been jumping off the bell tower ever since I read The Hunchback. Celine searched Raleig's face for hints of mischief, but there was none. The tower is very high. How haven't you died? I simply believed, said Raleigh. She crouched and let go of the pigeon, but it had imprinted on her and wouldn't move no matter how hard she should. It's like flying, really, the best feeling in the world. You simply climb up there, believe you can do it, and then let go. She smiled at Celine's perplexed look. I told you I can do things. I can show you, of course, if you like. Yes, she liked. Celine was curious as to how one could survive a fall of over 300 feet. Do you want to hear a story? Ralia asked. They were back in Celine's room. Celine sat between Ralia's legs, her head tilted backwards as Ralia braided her hair. Yeah, sure. It's a Nigerian folktale, said Ralia. My father loves to tell me Nigerian tales to remind me of my roots. Does your mother tell you folktales? No, said Celine. She knew very little about Nigeria, except the fact that it was hot and her relatives were so numerous that it was hard to place who was who. She had seen the photo albums, the lot of them 70 or so, grinning in spite of the sun's glare. Ralia gave a dramatic sigh. You poor thing. Well, it's lucky you have me. So, the tale begins like this. In a little village called Asia, there lived a wicked king. He was rich and powerful and very unkind. The villagers feared him. Anyone who tried to stand up to him always disappeared without trace, and so the villagers learned with time not to complain, regardless of the harsh living conditions. There was very little food. The king took it all for himself, and not that there was famine or anything like that. No, he just wanted them to suffer. He liked to watch them suffer. He was very wicked, Celine remarked. Yes, Ralia agreed, visibly pleased. He took all the best lands for himself, all the best girls. He had a very large harem of beautiful virgin girls. Celine giggled. Anyway, one day he went about the village as usual, seeking the finest girls to collect for his harem, when he found this girl by the stream. She was singing, her voice was magic, and the king fell in love immediately. He took her and decided to make her his queen, not just place her in the harem like the others. The girl, of course, was upset. She didn't want to leave her family and friends and spend her days locked up in the palace, but her family begged her not to cause any trouble because the king always made troublemakers disappear. Did she want them to disappear? Did she? She answered no, and that was that. She was taken to the palace and was made queen. The palace was large, and she had thousands of servants who served her and attended to her needs. But she was lonely. And even though this wicked and terrible king did his best to be kind to her, she still felt unhappy. Even though she was generally free to roam the palace, she was never allowed to leave, and soon it became clear that she was a prisoner. The only time she was alone was at night, and so, at night, she started to explore the palace, seeking for an escape. That was how she came across the door with no lock. A door with no lock? Celine repeated in a hushed, dramatic whisper. She tried to envision the door with no lock, and the vision of a wall rose in her mind. A door with no lock, Ralia repeated. It was a magic door, and it always changed positions. This night it was here, another night it was there, and the girl enjoyed roaming the palace every night, trying to find where the door would appear. And each night she found it, she grew more and more excited until she was no longer content with just finding the door. She wanted to open it, to see what was behind it. She was convinced the way to escape and freedom lay behind it. Celine turned now to face Ralia, her eyes wide with excitement. Did she open it? Ralia smiled. The door sensed she wanted to enter and spoke to her. It said, I am a door. My name is Door. I am protector of the secrets within. And the girl answered, I am a girl, I am the queen. Open door and admit me in. And the door swung open. Celine clapped and whooped with glee. And what did she find? She asked breathlessly. Hundreds and hundreds of small stone sculptures, said Raleigh. The girl realized with horror that they were the villagers who had disappeared, turned to stone sculptures by the king. She ran out of that room and roused the palace, screaming at the top of her voice of the atrocities behind the vanishing door. The news of what the king had done soon spread around the village, and the villagers, in their fury, marched to the palace to kill the king. Yes, Celine whooped. But the king fled and was never heard from again. Barlier finished. Till this day, the door remains in Issia, changing positions every night, hiding the hundreds of statues behind it. Wow, Celine breathed. Dusk had fallen. Long shadows fell across the room, and she could see the door before her, the door with no lock, hiding humans turned to stone. But it's not true, is it? It's a folk tale. Rolia simply shrugged. Rolia slapped Celine awake. Do you want to see me jump? What? Asked Celine, her eyes still groggy with sleep. Do you want to see me jump from the bell tower? Oh, she sat up. Yeah. Well, come on. They got dressed quickly, donning warm coats to protect from the autumn chill. Within minutes, they'd snuck out the house and were bounding along the street to the bell tower under the bright glare of a full moon. Celine had the distant feeling that she was in a dream and would soon wake up. She'd never snuck out the house before, much less at night, and now she was going to watch her best friend jump off tower to certain death, for surely no living person could survive that fall without a parachute. Of course, that was it. Ralia had a parachute. You're going to use a parachute, aren't you? Asked Celine excitedly, hoping Relia's answer was going to be in the affirmative. Nothing like that. Relia merely looked at her and shook her head. Celine was starting to get scared now. What if Relia actually jumped without a parachute? She was going to die. Was she really just going to stand there and watch her friend die? I'm scared, Relia. Don't be a scaredy cat, came the curt reply. They had arrived at the foot of the tower. The colossal structure stood stark and forbidding against the night sky. Relia took off her bag. There are 387 stairs to the top, she said. I'll try to run as fast as possible. You wait here and watch me as I jump. But, Celine began, but her friend was gone. Modupe stood up from the chair in her study and stretched. It had been a long day. Apart from the brief hour or two when she left to make dinner for her daughter, Celine, and her husband, Pierre, she had remained holed up in her study all day, translating the last pages of The Secret Lives of Baba Shaggy's Wives to French for the ladies of her book club. A fine mix of ladies they were, immigrants who'd married French. And so they spent their time reading the literature of their countries, seeking to immerse themselves in each other's experiences. She cracked her knuckles, removed her glasses, and waited for her laptop to shut down before switching off the lights and exiting the study. It was 2 a.m. Her husband was already fast asleep, and so was her daughter, her beautiful little daughter. Raising a child was no small feat, especially one as troubled as her daughter. She had suffered severely from depression, the poor thing. She had gone through almost 4 months of not speaking at all, scaring both Pierre and herself. All she needed was a companion, the benign psychologist had told her, perhaps a brother or a sister. But she and Pierre had been unable to provide her with a sibling, and it was not for lack of trying. The first time had been easy enough. She'd gotten pregnant with Celine almost immediately after marriage, but now, try as they could, she wasn't getting pregnant, and Celine kept sliding deeper and deeper into herself. Buy her a doll, her friend had advised. Girls are good with dolls. I bought my daughter one. Maybe it will help your daughter. But Modukwe had been skeptical. Teaching a child to enjoy the company of dolls and not real humans, how was that going to help her in the long run? She thought of taking her back to Nigeria. Maybe a change of scenery would do her some good. But she had vowed never to return to Nigeria, never to return to Asia. She still had nightmares about the disappearing door and the stone sculptures. And so she got her daughter a doll. She searched long and hard for a good doll maker who made quality dolls of girls of color. She didn't want some random white doll with blue eyes that didn't look anything like her daughter. Imagine her elation then when she finally found a Nigerian doll maker in the newspapers based just on the outskirts of Paris who specialized in quality handcrafted dolls. She called to order one immediately, giving specifications as to how it would look from the color of the skin down to the hairstyle and even the pre-recorded phrases in French. Hi, my name is Ralia. I'm Nigerian. I'm a little girl, just like you. The doll came and it looked uncannily like her daughter. If Modukwe was being honest, the resemblance unnerved her, tickled at something buried in the deepest recesses of her mind. But Pierre never saw the resemblance, and neither did Celine. And all her worries vanished when Celine took to the doll with much glee. Celine loved the doll, and both Modukwe and Pierre were grateful. She went everywhere with the doll, even insisted on feeding it her father's confectionaries. It was odd, admittedly, but she was a little girl who had found companion in a doll that helped her out of her depression, so she overlooked it. She would grow eventually out of it. Until that night when she attacked the doll in a fit of rage. Modukwe had been scared to learn that her daughter had so much destruction in her. The doll was in a bad shape and had to be shipped back to the doll maker for repairs. She would have driven down to the shop herself to expedite the process, but the doll maker had insisted she post it instead. She realized then that she had never met the doll maker, even upon purchase of the doll. Odd. But Modukwe had dealt with numerous eccentric creatives to know they all had their quirks. The envelope on the mantelpiece jolted Modukwe out of her reverie. How did it get here? Perhaps Pierre had placed it there so he wouldn't forget to take it to the post in the morning. She took the envelope and saw scrawled across the back a child's writing, "From my daddy." A lump appeared in Modukwe's throat. Something wasn't right. With great trepidation, she ripped open the envelope to find a letter. "I am your husband. I am the king. Isn't your daughter such a doll?" She flew from the living room and up the stairs into Celine's room. Celine was gone. So was Ralia, the doll. Celine watched as Ralia materialized from behind the large bell, waving down at her. She shouted something, but she was too high up and the wind carried her words away. Ralia spread out her hands and jumped. Celine watched in pure terror as Ralia fell, or not. She wasn't falling. The wind carried her, tossed her about like paper or stray autumn leaf. She fell like a leaf. Zig, zag, zig, zag. It was as though she were lighter than the air around her, as though she wasn't made of bones and blood and sinew. Berlia dropped to the ground in a perfect crouch. "Well," she exclaimed, clapping her hands excitedly, "what do you think?" Celine looked and looked and looked because this was Relia, but then it wasn't. This was the girl she knew, and yet it wasn't. Here was the truth in front of her, and she had always known it, hadn't she? Hadn't she? Relia came over and took Celine's hand. Her hand was cool and smooth and the hardness of plastic. "Do you like it?" Relia asked. "I know you did. You can do it too. All you have to do is believe." And then they were atop the bell tower. The beautiful city of Paris spread out before their eyes, and there was the bridge and the river sign and the Eiffel Tower. Do you believe? Ralia asked, her hard plastic eyes unblinking. I believe, said Celine. Now look down. Do you see that man? Celine looked. Yes, yes, she saw the man hiding in the shadows, he himself a shadow in his long trench coat. That is my daddy. He's waiting for us. Celine turned to look at Raleigh. This wasn't right. Everything was wrong. Everything. But she was past the point of no return. Close your eyes. And then she was flying. Flying. Zig, zag, zig, zag. She was lighter than the breeze. Her body was cool and smooth and plastic. But it was all right, because she was flying. The man placed the two little dolls, the pretty little things, side by side. They were holding hands. That was good. He left them undisturbed and closed the lid of the box. That's the end.
Wow. Thank you, Toby.
Thank
Um,
you.
Laura, it's kind of cool that at least once a week I know that my head is going to explode. Um, we are lucky. We say that every week. We just are very fortunate. We get to do this. We get to listen to such wonderful stories from you folks tonight and other authors on other nights. So, Tobi Ogundiran and Daria Lavelle, thank you both so much for sharing your work with us and with all the folks who will listen to this in the days and weeks to come. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Um, and thank you all for coming back yet again to join us with Story Hour. As I said at the beginning, we've been doing this for 5 years. We're not about to stop now. I want to thank my amazing co-host, Laura Blackwell. Again, our wonderful authors, Tobi Ogundiran and Daria Lavelle. And please come back next week because we're going to have L.E. Daniels and Pamela Jeffs. So, wow, that's it for now. Good night, folks.